Nearly 2 weeks passed since Matrona had last seen the Sentinel. Every day she paced around her room nervously waiting. When she heard a mechanical flash, she didn't hesitate to run into the lab room. She jumped up and hugged him. "Where have you been?" The Sentinel thought. "Okay, save it if you're about to lie to me." "I'm not about to lie, I'm trying to remember." "Remember? Did you do a bunch of stuff without me? It's only been 2 weeks." "Really?" the Sentinel asked. "Yeah, what's up with that?" I don't know. I didn't mean to be gone that long. It just kind of happened. I went to find answers. One thing led to another. Next thing I knew, the Sentinel stared off, losing his train of thought. He seemed to be trying to remember something. "You're right, let's go do something. I have a time machine. What the hell? May as well use it." "Good. You're over the whole responsibility thing." "Not entirely. I just feel a bit more responsible now." "Productive 2 weeks." "Yeah, well." The Sentinel stared off. "So where to?" Matrona asked. "Let's do a do-over on space, huh? What about the planet Illiosopherium, the Black Star 7 district in the Milky Way galaxy?" "The what of the what?" "Modern day, home of the species called the Gars." "I don't know, but it sounds like the place to be." "Sound cool?" The Sentinel shook his head as if he remembered something. "Aliens, huh? Yeah, what the hell, why not?" Matrona held out her hand. The Sentinel placed his in hers and they vanished in a flash. Coarse, gritty orange dirt lay over the flat, hard ground, stretching all the way to the horizon. On the edge of the horizon, they could see a distant image of another planet, glistening white, and behind it, a dark black, ringed gas planet. The planet's orange surface was scattered with deep, narrow canyons. Small tufts of fluorescent blue grass sprouted between larger rocks. Foliage was sparse, aside from one oasis of purple-leafed trees on the edge of the green horizon. It appeared as though city lights shone through the leaves, as if the oasis was a place that others called home. The Sentinel and Matrona made their way towards it. "What's the story here? How do you know about this place? What's it got to do with you?" "I'm having trouble remembering much. Something's telling me I should be here. I do know that oasis over there is Japico City, the only city on the entire planet, but then, given the size of the planet, that's not too surprising." Matrona stared at the Sentinel, trying to figure him out. He wasn't exactly what she envisioned he would become. "You know what? I just remembered the reason we're here. They're in desperate need of help." The Sentinel stopped at the entrance gate to the city. "Also, I should probably warn you, they can shapeshift, which is cool, but the Gar's natural form, though, is jarring, to say the least," the Sentinel admitted as a Gar approached the gate to let them in. "Ah, you're back," the Gar said to the Sentinel, like he was greeting an old friend. "I thought Rex had sent you off." The Sentinel turned around with a smile. "Kogar, how's it going?" "Oh my god," Matrona looked away. "What is that thing?" "Matrona! Manners, please. This is... Kogar?" "Don't mind her, she's a bit uncultured when it comes to beings unfamiliar to her." "Excuse me?" Matrona challenged, offended. "Okay, you make it sound bad. This is my first ever alien sighting, so don't make me look bad." "Matrona, huh?" Kogar raised a bushy, feathery brow. The Gar was long, nearly 10 feet tall, serpentine in stature. His legless, levitating body hung loosely from a large, nearly spherical head, supported only by a small set of feathered wings on his shoulders. His bright red reptilian skin was complemented by his thin, feathery gray eyebrows. A single bony plate protruded from his head like a shark fin. He held out his small hand, resembling a bird's foot. He outstretched his fingers. "Nice to meet you." Matrona refused his offer for a handshake, trying her best to be polite about it. "So," the Sentinel began, "Kogar helped me make my stupid box lamp time machine less stupid in equal amounts of box and lampy." The Sentinel showed off the box, which was slightly smaller. He fastened it at his back as it was now attached to leather backpack straps. "With the improvements to the box, which is what I'm going to call it for now until I can actually be creative, we can help out with the Gar's issues more effectively." "What exactly is their problem anyway? And why are you helping them and not another Gar? What can you do for them? Shouldn't you be worried about Earth stuff?" "Matrona!" the Sentinel exclaimed. "That's speciesist. The Gars and their society are hugely important to the Milky Way, which Earth is a part of, by the way," he explained. "So why haven't I heard of him?" "She's right, you know," Kogar said. "Your people should know of us by now." "Like I said, all of the Gars on the planet reside here in Japico," the Sentinel continued. "They're a very confined and reserved species. There's this one Gar, though. He's a bit of a rebel, so he left. He brought along some of his followers, too." "Okay, and?" "And they're not just trying to leave their city. They're on a mission to take over this planet. Something's telling us they won't stop at just the one." "Oh, wow, so yeah, pretty important." "His name's Rogar. He's already assassinated King Sogar III and taken his place. Rumor has it he's planning a takeover of the city," Kogar explained. "We're hoping that you two could find a way to stop him from the inside, without conflict. It should be the easiest solution." "And so this is where we stand." The Sentinel turned to Kogar. "So, where do we find Rogar?" Kogar lifted a brow. "Sogar's temple on the hill." Kogar pointed at a faraway hill on the horizon. "We've been there before." "All right." The Sentinel held his hand out to Matrona. She reluctantly took his hand in hers. Kogar placed his bird-like, scaly hand on top of theirs. Matrona shuddered at first, but didn't pull away. She glanced at Kogar. "You're not going without me," Kogar proclaimed. They flashed away to the gates of the fortress. "So how do you guys know each other?" Matrona asked the Sentinel and Kogar, looking to either of them for answers. "I'm not entirely sure I remember." The Sentinel looked down at his hands. Kogar glanced at the Sentinel. "It's a long story," he added, turning the words over in his head. He was slowly realizing something. Matrona looked toward the Sentinel inquisitively. "Right," she mumbled. "You guys seem to have a lot of history for only knowing each other for a couple of weeks." Kogar lifted a finger to speak up, but the Sentinel interrupted as they approached the fortress. "This place looks old," the Sentinel said. The fortress that stood before them looked old and run down, ancient like it had always been there. Something felt off to the Sentinel about the building, like it was trying to tell him something. There was a short silence broken abruptly by the Sentinel. "Rogar didn't build it, did he? He stole it." The Sentinel pushed the gate, expecting some resistance. It swung open with ease. Kogar elaborated about the place. "It belonged to the first king Sogar, built by Kranika's Krantharniks of old." "The Krantharniks?" the Sentinel asked as they made their way to the door. Kogar's brows furrowed with concern. Something was up with the Sentinel. He knocked loudly, and the door was answered quickly by a small, scrawny blue Gar. "Soilu Ugunt?" The Gar spoke in a questioning tone, eyeballing Kogar. "Ugunt Lue Rogar," Kogar responded in his native tongue. The small Gar nodded and opened the door wide, gesturing for them to enter. As they walked through the doorway, the Gar kept a close eye on the Sentinel and Matrona. Once they made it through the door, the Gar slammed it shut and leaned against it. The sound of the slamming door echoed through the halls and up the stairwell. The Sentinel looked around and he spotted something carved into a stone near one of the towering walls. It was guarded by 2 Gars. He approached it slowly. Kogar and Matrona followed after him. The guards in front of the stone held up their hands, silently telling them to stop. The carved stone tablet was ancient, and beneath it inscribed symbols that read Lon Oklosos. The stone was split into 4 sections with a circle in the middle. The circle seemed to be the head of an angry figure wearing a crown that seemed tipped with snow. In the 4 carved sections around it were 4 other creatures. A Gar, some sort of owl-like bird, an eyeball with tentacles, and a wolf with a shape in its forehead surrounded with carved electricity. "Oh," Kogar noticed the Sentinel admiring the carving. "Those are the originals. Modius, Sogar, Dial, Kranika, and Dracona." Kogar was about to explain something to Matrona. Long ago, a door creaked open upstairs. Startled, Matrona turned around. The Sentinel turned his head hesitantly, and Kogar was frozen in fear. A large figure slithered down the stairs, and then righted itself. Floating upright stood a long, well-built Gar. His skin was a shade of green so dark it could be mistaken for black in the shadows. The silhouette made its way out of the shadows, closer to the trio. The dim light of the room highlighted his cyan blue feathers that lined his thick eyebrow ridge and small pair of wings. His glowing yellow eyes stared directly at the Sentinel. He narrowed his bright red, snake-like pupils. 3 shark fin-shaped spikes on his round head shot up with excitement. The beast smiled, showing yellow-stained, grisly teeth. He laughed a rumbling laugh that shook the walls of the temple, and he clapped slowly with his small, bird-like hands leaning back.
"So it's him, isn't it?"
He spoke in a raspy voice, sounding worn and experienced in the English language. "Rogar?" The Sentinel spoke, nervously, feigning confidence.
"Is this the puny creature the prophecy of the Dragolupus spoke of? The supposed mighty guardian of the multiverse?"
He commented, as though underwhelmed.
"A human?"
"I'm the Sentinel." The Sentinel stood straighter, nervously keeping up a confident front. Matrona hid behind him in fear, locking her eyes on the massive beast.
"So it is you."
Rogar flew closer towards him, flying around him, scanning him up and down, then sighed.
"Give up. You don't know what you're doing here."
"He's right," Matrona muttered. Kogar floated idly by the Sentinel. "I assure you he does. I know that you're a danger to the Gars, and humans."
"I'm a savior, boy. Don't let this guard trick you into believing he speaks for us all."
"I don't want to fight you on this," the Sentinel said with a waver in his voice. There was no way he could beat this dragon in a fight. "Sentinel," Matrona stepped in.
"You know,"
Rogar looked the Sentinel up and down.
"the prophecy did say that I would win, but I was at least hoping for a fair fight."
"I don't want to fight, we're here to bargain," the Sentinel backed up.
"I'm not."
Rogar smiled. A faint glow of purple shone between his missing teeth as the smile grew bigger. "Sentinel, watch out!" Kogar yelled. Rogar opened his mouth wide. The same familiar purple flames burst from his mouth. The Sentinel stood still. Time around him seemed to slow. He stared at the flames as they drew closer. He shut his eyes tight. He thought he was in imminent danger. He put his arms up to fend off the flames. Time seemed to speed back to normal. It took the Sentinel a few moments before he realized that he wasn't being burned alive. He opened his eyes to see that the flames were moving around him, as if an invisible shield surrounded him. He moved his arms outward, and the flames pushed further away from him. Matrona and Rogar stared from behind. The Sentinel outstretched a single finger and touched the flames. A spark traveled up his hand and caught it aflame. He retracted his finger and noticed that the small flame could travel around his hand at his own will. He thought of the flame growing larger, and to his surprise, it did. The flame was hot, but it didn't burn. He pushed back at Rogar with the flame until they were locked in a reverse tug-of-war. Rogar had no idea, and neither did the Sentinel himself, that he could defend himself. He tried to push against the deadly current, but his flames were vanishing, and Rogar's were drawing closer. He tried as hard as he could to push back, and the more he tried, the more it strained him. "Sentinel!" Matrona yelled. Rogar and Matrona jumped towards the Sentinel. It took hold of his time machine, and the three of them flashed away, back to the Sentinel's lab. As far as Rogar knew, when the flames had all gone, was that he had killed the Sentinel, Matrona, and Rogar. Little did he know what he had just started.